Hello my friends, in this video we'll be taking a look at the autosomal DNA results, predicted phenotype traits, and I'm also going to show you the Eurogene's 36 results of Sari Bel, Iron Age Turkic individual from Siberia in Russia, from this location right here. So we're going to look at what this Iron Age Turkic individual from Sari Bel in Siberia scores with Eurogene's 36 and with my trait predictor, various calculators on trait predictor. We're going to find out what this individual scores, what this individual's genetic predispositions are, what he looks like. It's going to be certainly a very interesting video to see. This sample was suggested to me by a friend on Discord. I'm quite close to this person. I respect him quite a lot. So um, definitely a lot of respect, a lot of mutual respect between me and that individual. But anyway, let's get on into the video. The haplogroups for this individual, it's sample RISE602. The haplogroups for this person is G2A. For the Y DNA, my trait predictor actually determines the haplogroup as J, but that's because there was nothing found for J2, and there was actually 4 variants for J2A found out of 4 total. So if there was any found for J2, it would have predicted him to be J2A, but there was nothing found for J2, unfortunately, in the file. So the file was a little bit low quality, and because the file was low quality like that, it wasn't able to determine the haplogroup more precisely. So that's very unfortunate. The haplogroup really is J2A, which is kind of like a Middle Eastern or Caucasus lineage, um, and at least it did correctly determine the lineage as J. At least that is a win, that is a victory. But still, it would be very much better if it also determined it as J2A. But still, you can sort of figure it out by looking at the table of variants here. You can still figure it out that it is J2A, because 4 out of 4 total for J2A, it is very revealing. The only reason he's not scoring J2A for the string, for the result string here, is that he's not scoring any for J2, because that is simply not in his file. This information is simply not in his file. And for the mitochondrial lineage, his mitochondrial lineage is actually C4. Very interesting mitochondrial lineage. I don't know much about mitochondrial lineages, so I can't really tell you where that is most commonly found in. But I can tell you that J2 is a very Caucasian CHG paternal haplogroup. Anyway, let's see what he scores with Eurogene's 36. It's a very interesting calculator. It's very detailed, it's like you get a very detailed breakdown. He's scoring, the largest group that he's scoring is Siberian. He's scoring 22.01% Siberian. The second largest group he's scoring is South Central Asian. South Central Asian is kind of this Baloch slash Pashtun slash Brahwi group, so he's scoring a lot of this Pakistani-like component. Then he's scoring North Caucasian, North Caucasus, which is like Chechen or Dagestani components. So he's got a lot of this Caucasus and Pakistan like admixture in his result. 7.5% Volga-Ural, 7% Eastern European, 6% North Sea, 6% East Central Asian, which is like Kyrgyz or Kazakh, 5.5% Amerindian, 5% East Central European, 4.5% North Atlantic, 4.5% Finno-Scandian, 2% West African, and the rest doesn't really matter all that much. The rest is kind of like nothing, pretty much. And he's actually getting modeled as a mixture of Bashkir plus Tajik as the closest model, the closest mixture, and Bashkir plus Yagnobi as the second closest mixture, and Bashkir plus Kalash as the third, and Tajik plus Ket as the fourth. Very interesting models here. So he seems to be getting modeled as a mixture of various Turkic groups plus Tajiks or Kalash or Ket. Very Central Asian in the result. How about we see the Enmonte? That might be quite cool. So here we see that the breakdown is 1/4 Udmurt, roughly 1/4 Yagnobi. Yagnobis are a group of indigenous people of Tajikistan. 13% Chukchi. Chukchi are Arctic people of Siberia. 11% Kyrgyz. 7% Arcadian. Arcadian are Northwest Europeans. 3.5% Orokian. Orokian are Siberians once again. 3.5% Patan. Patan are in Pakistan. 3.5% Chuvash. 3% Baloch. 2.5% African American. So he's very Udmurt and Yagnobi and Chukchi and Kyrgyz. So he's just very Central Asian in the result. Very interesting result. Definitely very Central Asian. Um, in terms of the closest population, I think it would be better to see the result with Eurogenes 13. Eurogenes 36 is like there's too many components. It's difficult to calculate the closest population. Actually, maybe even K10 will be better. So let's try K10. And meanwhile, while that is running, let's see his results with my own ethnicity calculator. Let's see what he scores here. And here he is scoring closest to Botai hunter-gatherer from Kazakhstan, followed by Livan Luchta Iron Age, followed by KRD003, Levant Chalcolithic individual from the Levant, followed by Natufian, followed by Bactrians, followed by BMAC, followed by South Indian from Rupkund, followed by Afghan, followed by Algerian, followed by Balchoy Ostrov. So it's kind of like a mixture of things. There is some West Asian groups, and there is also some Central Asian groups. And the closest mixtures is Islamic period Iberian plus Australian native, Satsurblia plus Anzik, Pinarbasi plus Australian native, Ongia plus Satsurblia, Polynesian plus Arab, Turkish plus Australian native, Georgian plus Australian native, Jamon plus Arab, Israelite plus Australian native, and Uyghur plus Satsurblia. Very interesting models. So there is quite a lot of shift towards Australian native and Anzic in the result here. And let's see what Eurogenes K10 shows up with. So Eurogenes K10 result looks closest to Bashkir, followed by Udmurt, followed by Uzbek, followed by Karakalpak, followed by Kazakh. And the mixed mode looks like a mixture of Bashkir plus Patan for the closest mixture, followed by a mixture of Bashkir plus Pakistani Jat, and a mixture of Bashkir plus Pakistani, Bashkir plus Tajik, and Bashkir plus Tajik plus from Pamir for all the closest mixtures. So really, this person looks like a mixture of Bashkir plus something from Tajikistan or Pamir or Pakistan. That's what it looks like to me. That's what I'm observing here. Anyway, let's move on to the Nasha code calculator results. Let's see what this individual looks like for the phenotype. Looks like he's got darkest brown eyes, definitely quite dark for the eye color. For blue eyes, definitely doesn't have blue eyes. Very low likelihood of that. Blue eyes with a neighbor center ring, very low likelihood of that as well. Green eyes, very low likelihood of that as well. For hair color likelihood of distribution, black hair, most likely likelihood of black hair. For skin color likelihood distribution, most likely has light brown skin. Actually, even olive skin is actually quite low likelihood of that, and quite a high likelihood of dark brown skin for him as well. So he's pretty dark for skin tone, pretty dark for hair tone, pretty dark for eye tone, pretty dark for skin tone. For hair texture, looks like he most likely has wavy hair texture, wavy or straight. Curly is also quite possible. Kinky hair is out of the picture. For nose shape, it looks like he most likely has Greek nose shape at 64% likelihood. Snub nose shape is kind of out of the picture. Well, it's not really out of the picture. 35% is a lot. So he's just got a slight predisposition to Greek nose shape. That would be the correct way to put it. It looks like he does not have blue haplotype 2 or 1. But he does have 2 light color variants in this variation right here. So he does actually have BEH4. Which is really surprising because this is really uncommon. Like, this is really, really uncommon. It's unusual to see 2 light color variants here. The frequency of that is of a genotype like that in it peaks in people of the Caucasus and people of southwestern Europe, and even among them, a genotype like that is found in maybe like 1% of people. So this is just a really, really unusual and uncommon genotype to see 2 light color variants in this variation of OCA2. Really, really unusual. So anyway, he has blue haplotype 4. Okay, quite interesting. The contribution of blue haplotype 4 to actual eye color isn't that much, but um, it's just a very unusual genotype to see. He doesn't have any of the light color variants in SLC for 45A2 that contribute to pigmentation of eyes, hair, and skin, so no light color variants here. This unfortunately is absent from the file, so we don't know what he has here. And it looks like no variants for pigmentation of ginger hair and pale skin and MC1R. Unfortunately, there just isn't much data in the file to go off here. If there was more data in the file, it could make it maybe generate more content for you to talk about. Okay, let's look at the phenotype oracle now. What phenotypes does he match closest to? So the closest phenotypes to him is this. It's interesting that the closest phenotype to him is actually like a white person, despite him scoring so dark for the skin tone. The closest phenotype to him is a white person, and the second closest is an Asian, or I guess a Tibetan, right? And the third closest is a North African. Okay. Well, it doesn't matter that it's North African. It matters what it looks like, right? It doesn't matter what ethnicity it is. It matters what it looks like physically. But for the mixtures, the closest mixture is a mixture 50% list plus 50% nat, and the second closest mixture is 50% list plus 50% nat. The third is 50% this plus 50% that. The fourth is 50 this, 50 that. So it looks like there actually isn't much East Asian influence in this person's appearance, which is really surprising considering that with Eurogene's K10, his closest population is Bashkir. So what we want to look at is we want to look at his genotype in EDAR. Let's see. What does he score for that? Yeah, you see, so for EDAR, his genotype is actually typical for Europeans. He's got typical European genotype for EDAR, and that plays a big contribution. That makes a big contribution to what you score for the phenotype oracle. So because of that, he's not scoring much East Asian for the phenotypes. But nonetheless, it's interesting that despite not having East Asian genotype for EDAR, the second closest phenotype to him is still this Tibetan somehow. So it looks like he's still scoring East Asian. Let's see. Let's see for the facial morphology oracle, because I did put it here on the bottom. So he's not scoring anything for sub-Saharan African, 0% for that. He's scoring 16% for Amerindian. All right. He's not scoring anything for East Asian. He's scoring 19 for Estonian or Northeast European. This I think is for Middle Eastern, so 6% Middle Eastern. This I think is Northwest European, so 48% Northwest European. This I think is South Asian, and this is Oceanian, so he's not scoring any Oceanian. All right, so he's mostly scoring Northwest European actually, and a little bit South Asian, and a little bit Estonian, and of a little bit of Amerindian. That's quite interesting. Yeah, so he's definitely very dark. I mean, he being so dark for uh scoring such a dark skin tone, light brown skin at 85%, and dark brown skin at 13.5% is very atypical for a white person. The phenotype oracle is meant for like modern people. It's not meant for various ancient peoples who don't fit the criteria of classification. Like you're not gonna find a Northwest European in the modern world who scores light brown skin with my Nashakot. It just doesn't happen. Anyway, let's see what he scores for the biomarkers panel. For the biomarkers panel, he's gonna score below average for the vitamin D levels. He's gonna score above average for levels of LDL cholesterol. He's going to score um, above average for the levels of HDL cholesterol. He's going to score below average for the levels of glucose. He's going to score uh, average for levels of hemoglobin. He's scoring below average for blood pressure. He's scoring slightly below average for levels of iron in blood. He's scoring average for sex hormone binding globulin. He's scoring average for red blood cell count in blood, and slightly below average for number of base pairs for the telomere length. So he's actually a little bit predisposed to lower number of base pairs for the telomere length, slightly shorter lifespan, and slightly shorter height as well. Very interesting. A little bit shorter stature. Let's see the polygenic risk scores now. So it looks like he is scoring very much above the average odds for hemoglobin E disease, and he has has three risk variants right here. Quite interesting. He's got below average odds for migraine. He's got above average odds for lupus. He's got below average odds for gout. He's got below average odds for thyroid cancer. He's got very low odds for eczema. He's got below average odds for exfoliation glaucoma and below average odds for primary congenital glaucoma. He's got slightly above average odds for polycystic ovary syndrome. He's got below average odds for cataracts. He's got slightly above average odds for age-related macular degeneration. He's got slightly above average odds for rheumatoid arthritis. He's got slightly below average odds for Tourette's. He's got slightly above average odds for epilepsy. He's got slightly above average odds for asthma. He's got slightly below average odds for leukemia. He's got slightly below average odds for vitiligo. Slightly above average odds for myopia. Slightly above average odds for corneal astigmatism. He's got slightly above average odds for primary biliary cirrhosis. He's got slightly below average odds for stroke. He's got slightly above average odds for male pattern hair loss. So far, it's all very slightly. I mean, there is nothing too like concerning here. He's got slightly below average odds for atrial fibrillation. He's got slightly below average odds for deep vein thrombosis. Slightly below average odds for unipolar depression, so not very predisposed to depression. He's got sort of high odds for bipolar type 1. He's also got sort of high odds for schizophrenia. He's got average odds for type 2 diabetes. He's got average odds for type 1 diabetes. He's got average odds for Alzheimer's. He's got high odds for multiple sclerosis. So the things he's got high odds for are multiple sclerosis, schizophrenia, and bipolar type 1. I really want to see does he have risk variants for multiple sclerosis in the HLA, or are those risk variants outside of the HLA gene? No risk variants for breast cancer. Really good to see. Really good to see. Okay, for Keto G, looks like he has risk variants for Keto G in all the important variations right here, here. All the important risk variants for testicular cancer in the Keto G gene. So he's quite cooked for testicular cancer. For celiac disease section, he has one risk variant for celiac disease out of 10, so he's quite cooked as well. For GSS, no risk variants for GSS. For Crohn's syndrome, Crohn's disease, two risk variants for Crohn's, quite typical. No risk variants for Riefenstein's, quite good. No risk variants for Parkinson's, quite good. One risk variant for Gilbert's, okay, but it's a common risk variant. No risk variants for basal cell carcinoma, quite good. No risk variants for GCD, quite good. No risk variants for Waardenburg syndrome, quite good. Allergies panel, he's got 3 risk variants, but they're all common. For familiar hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, he's got 1 risk variant, but it's not common. It's not common. Let's look it up. Is it not common? It is not common at all. It is not common whatsoever. Okay, so that's interesting. He has risk variant for familiar hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is not common whatsoever. This is definitely very unusual. For irritable bowel syndrome, he's got 2 risk variants that are common. For congenital insensitivity to pain, he's got no risk variants found in the file. Brugada syndrome, 2 risk variants that are common. Treacher-Collins syndrome, no risk variants found in the file. Pfeiffer syndrome, 2 risk variants that are common. Familiar thoracic or aortic aneurysm, 2 risk variants that are common. Myosclerosis variants that are common. And these diseases, no risk variants found in the file. So pretty good. Overall, quite healthy. Quite good. Good stuff. The only problem here actually is the genotype for familiar hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, where he's got somehow risk variants here that are actually, I'm not sure, it might be a miscall. It might be a problem with the file itself. There might be a problem with the file. Sometimes there's miscalls with these files. Well, let's go through the monogenic results and see what he scores. First, we start with the mental health section. Looks like when it comes to dopamine degradation, the rate of dopamine breakdown and the warrior versus warrior phenotypes, he has a predisposition to intermediate phenotype, which means intermediate rate of dopamine breakdown. If you take into account all his genotypes in COMT, MAOA, and MAOB, he has a predisposition to intermediate rate of dopamine breakdown. When it comes to DRD2, he has a predisposition to higher number of dopamine D2 receptor sites in the brain. When it comes to 5-HT serotonin, he has a predisposition to higher levels of 5-HT. Very, very interesting. I wonder if he has long form 5-HT-LPR, if that's even in the file. That is not in the file, unfortunately. I'm not seeing that anywhere here. But based on other genotypes in this region, actually based on this one genotype in this region, he has a genotype that protects from issues with relating to serotonin transportation. So overall, he's quite good. He's quite good in terms of the um, serotonin related issues. No dwarfism in FGFR3, no predisposition to dwarfism. And he's got this genotype, which is quite an uncommon genotype, which leads to a 7 times increased risk of DSPS. I forgot what DSPS is actually. It's some sort of sleep disorder. All right, for mental health results section, for results for autism only, looks like he has a predisposition to higher odds of autism. By the way, this takes into account all genotypes relevant to autism, not only these three. So it takes into account everything relevant to autism, not only stuff that's on this panel. So he definitely has a predisposition to higher odds of autism. And for lactose persistence, looks like he does not carry any risk variants for European lactose persistence. He definitely is not, doesn't carry the European variants for European lactose persistence. If he took an ancestry DNA test, they would say, hey, you are not lactose persistent. For OXTR and empathy gene, he has a predisposition to lower levels of empathy based on these three genotypes. If you take into account these three genotypes, he has a predisposition to lower levels of empathy. So he has two sociopath variants in these two variations, and two empathic variants in this one variation. So it's 2 for sociopath and 1 for empath. 2 beats 1, and because of that, he's scoring higher for lower levels of empathy rather than for this. He doesn't carry any risk variants for hemochromatosis, and for Alzheimer's, no risk variants for Alzheimer's in APOE. All right. For cardiovascular issues, looks like he has a predisposition to intermediate odds of cardiovascular issues, so he's quite good in terms of cardiovascular issues. Okay, yes, we remember he was scoring high for multiple sclerosis, and we see that he does have 2 risk variants for multiple sclerosis in this variation of HLA-ZRB1. He does have risk variants for multiple sclerosis in the HLA gene. Unfortunately, there isn't much quality to this file. If this file was higher quality, we could probably see a lot better coverage, because there is like 5 different variations for HLA for multiple sclerosis. We could probably see, does he have risk variants in other variants of HLA as well? Probably yes, probably as well, probably for those as well, because they come together, they come in pairs. But we don't know that for sure, and it would be good to know for sure. Okay, for facial morphology panel, we talked about the EDAR already, but let's talk about the other stuff. He has high odds of protruding nasal bridge, he has larger nose size, and he has likely nose pointing up based on his genotype in DCHS2. Very interesting. He doesn't have risk variants for vitiligo in the HLA gene. Okay. Does not have micropenis. He doesn't have he has one fat gene variant, and it shows RS9949609. He has slightly higher odds of obesity and sleep apnea, and no variants for increased pain sensitivity in SCN9A. No risk variants for pain hypersensitivity out of 10 total in SCN9A, quite typical. and a risk of heart failure due to beta blocker medications is slightly above average for him. Definitely quite interesting. He's got TT in his variation of OCT1, which leads to lower odds of cannabis-induced psychosis. So he's a little bit protected from psychosis due to smoking weed. For albinism and atypical traits panel, it looks like he is not a carrier of any of the albinism mutations, and he is also not a carrier of Melanesian blonde hair variants. For familiar Mediterranean fever variants, what's interesting is he actually carries two risk variants for familiar Mediterranean fever in this variation, and two risk variants for familiar Mediterranean fever in this variation. So he actually carries some risk variants for familiar Mediterranean fever, four risk variants in total. This might be the highest I've seen thus far. How does this individual from Iron Age Siberia carry so many risk variants for familiar Mediterranean? Let me paraphrase that for you: Mediterranean fever. How distant is Siberia from the Mediterranean? I mean, it's crazy. Uh, very interesting for sure. MTHFR panel, very typical genotype here. Um, okay, rare diseases and traits panel. Let's see. Does he have any predisposition to any rare diseases? Uh, okay. Nope. I'm not really seeing any rare diseases. He's looking pretty healthy. Looking pretty healthy. He's got the genotype here, which leads to high risk of male pattern hair loss. Um, he's got one APOB risk variance for familiar hypercholesteremia out of 8 total, quite typical. For celiac disease, no risk variance in HLA for celiac disease, which is really quite good. Um, all right, for androgen receptor gene panel, no risk variance for androgen insensitivity or Reifenstein syndrome, which is really good. For Canavan syndrome, no risk variance for Canavan syndrome. For HIV and AIDS panel, no protective variance, which is unfortunate. For HLA gene panel, so he's still got a predisposition to lower odds of autoimmune disease, but still he has a lot of the percentage for higher odds of autoimmune disease for him is really high, 22.7%. So he still has a lot of risk variance for the higher odds of autoimmune disease in HLA. For MTRR gene panel, it looks like he has no risk variance for disorders of intracellular collagen metabolism. And for homocystinuria panel, it looks like there is no risk variance found in the file for homocystinuria. And he's got a predisposition to lower homocysteine levels. Really good stuff. So it definitely got lower levels of homocysteine. For muscular dystrophy myopathies, looks like he doesn't have any risk variance for that. No risk variance for ADL either, which is really good. For color blindness panel, no risk variance in OPN1SW or OPN1LW, so he's not predisposed to color blindness. FTO gene panel, no risk variance for obesity and FTO, except for this one, but it's heterozygous here, so it's not that big of a deal. And other genes also implicated in obesity, he actually has genotypes that are also correlated to lower odds of obesity. For syncope panel, it looks like based on Forest and PCS, slightly above average odds for syncope. And for biotraits panel, let's see. Lower predisposition to anger, 2 copies of the farmer CLT-CL1 gene variant, which leads to a selective advantage in processing carbohydrate-rich diets, presumably including those with lots of sugar. Um, and let's see. For vitamins and levels, let's see. He has got higher ascorbic acid free sulfate levels. He's got higher levels of vitamin A, and he's got genotype for lower levels of vitamin E. He's got a genotype for higher levels of vitamin K. He's got a genotype for higher levels of vitamin B12, and he's got a genotype for lower red blood cell count. Definitely quite interesting. And for blood group panel, his blood type is most likely type O. So this is determined on the basis of not that many SNPs. This is like what 5 SNPs, but it's quite precise because when you see a percentage of 80%, it's quite precise. So I actually kind of trust this when it says 80% for type O. I definitely do trust this. So I say I believe that it is blood type O for him. Well, um, definitely very interesting sample from Iron Age Siberia in Russia, in this region right here. I'm not sure what republic that is. What republic is that? It doesn't say. Maybe it's Tuva. Is it Tuva? I don't know. I have no clue. Maybe it's Altai. Is it? It might be Altai. Yeah. So very interesting. Altaiski Krai. Yeah. Maybe it's in. Maybe leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Leave a comment. Let me know what republic that was. This sample is from, and definitely leave a comment. Letting me know what culture, what ethnicity you think this sample belongs to. Is it Turkic? Is it some kind of proto-Turkic, proto-Iranic? Um, you know, who this sample contributed to? What cultures this sample contributed to? Anything you might know about the sample aside from what I've told you in this video already. And of course, you can buy my tool that I use to generate these reports on these DNA samples, on these DNA files. The version 13, which I'm using currently for this video, it is coming out on May 22nd on my itch store. The version 13 will cost more than the current version 12 that is on itch. The version 12 costs $13. Version 13 will cost maybe 22. I'm not sure. But if you bought version 12 now, you will be able to get the upgrade for free. You can just go and get it for free. So, like, you don't have to pay again to get the upgrade. So anyway, I'm just right now I'm just working through and fixing the bugs. One bug I noticed right now, like I was filming the video and just noticed the bug. Let me show you. It's very interesting. So it actually pissed me off a little bit. Like I was filming and I was like, oh, I can't stand this. It's this, like this, seeing this for the Raffenstein section. You're not supposed to see this. It's supposed to say no risk variance found in file, but I'm seeing this instead. So that pissed me off a little bit. I have to fix that now. Anyway, thanks for watching. Leave a like and subscribe. Um, Definitely show your support for me. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.